Incremental greetings! Yet another video about LittleFishChan, the SuperMemo user that hasn't had a rest day ever. Then, this is the 20 years milestone. Oh my god. So what I'm going to cover are the stats, because on some of his replies, he actually shared the stats. So I will cover this, and I think even more juicy will be the comparison with the previous milestone that I have access to, that I have some knowledge. So basically the screenshot. So, and for your convenience, because all of this is very low quality, especially the previous milestone, I have these stats in text, and we will see later the comparison, what happened and so on. As you can see, I put on quite a lot of effort already here. So yeah, I think it has more quality than the previous videos because I already covered this. And here you go. Those are the stats after 2 million milestone repetitions. The case of Little Fish, this was already in 2022. Oh my god. Feel free to watch this. It's slightly more than 16 years. Because I got this data from the old SuperMemo server, and then I asked for permission to use it. And this is a hint already. Feel free to watch this. Stop the video now and watch this if you or in any point of the video if you care, because this will have a direct impact on understanding his stats. Effects of systematically overruling the SuperMemo algorithm. What the F is this? And repetitions before anything else, meaning item repetitions before anything else. Nice. So it's been a while, more than 3 years. So let's keep going with the current milestone. This is, by the way, very fresh. This was about 2 weeks ago. I just needed some back and forth asking some questions, key questions. You will see myself here digging further, and here's a screenshot. But hey, the screenshot is not, there's some stuff that has been cut, stuff like this. Oh my god, do you see? But later, too many comments and I didn't get answers back. So then, the first point is that it's a life learning commitment. It's not that it's extraordinary longevity, it's 20 years, it's who has been using SuperMemo or any similar thing. Anki, now you could say even by the end of the year, you could say that. Because he will be 20 years old, Anki as well. But not just that. It's because I can say that I have been using this for more than 16 years already. But no, I cannot say that I had been continuous use. Well, grammatically speaking, yes, it's continual in time, but not in the sense that I have used it every single day. No exceptions. No exceptions. No cheating involved. That's why I call it, you may be surprised, you have seen the title of the video, 20 years as SuperMemo slave. Because in short, it is what it is. It's excessive, it's unhealthy, and because I also know some stuff that he shared, so beyond the numbers, you put it on a priority that you shouldn't. You shouldn't. Then, even though that's not the point of this video, I wanted to make it clear, please don't do that. Do not aim at an streak. It's a vanity metric. And before we dig into the details, you'll realize that if you check his profile in Reddit and go to posts, look what he is sharing. 20-year anniversary milestone. The same in a different subreddit. This milestone is in days. I don't know how many years is that. I may guess 19 or whatever. 19 in Anki. 17 years. 17 years in a different subreddit. This is only off topic. Coconut something. Pomodoro, but you see, milestone, milestone, milestone. He is virtually using his account to only share his streaks. There's nothing else. We reached the rock bottom already. And why he doesn't use the SuperMemo subreddit? And as he has mentioned himself in one of the comments, because he won't get exposure. There's a lot more people checking out Reddit, the subreddit of Anki, meaning he wants to be seen. So at some degree, even if it's very ingrained, there is some vanity. Because why you should keep in a streak? Keep it to yourself, right? Why you should always show off? Because part of the reason to keep the streak is to show it off later. It just makes sense. That's an extraordinary, it's tired. That's why, even if it's not the goal of this video, I feel I need to do this up front. Nice. Then, from now on, we'll see more or less by layers, because there's quite a lot of unpack. And since it's very low quality, again, it will be on the screen, and then in the comparison, it will be as text. So you don't even need to take a peek on the screen. Nice. So let's just start with the number of elements. You may think that, hey, it's a little more than 250,000. It's not a big deal. Actually, in my collection, I already have, and that's a backup. But yeah, it's not important. Yeah, it's a backup. Now this is just a learning. There's no language learning here. I already started a backup just for this video. If you see, it's a different collection. It's not my learning collection. Then you will say, hey, it's not a big deal, because if I open my collection, this one, it's just 5.5 years old, and I have 282,000 elements, because mostly is unprocessed. I have stuff pending to be seen. You will see later with the other stats that the total size is very small, comparing with the age is very small, because there's almost everything is memorized. There's nothing that is pending to be seen. That's why it's so small. If my collection, the one I just shown to you, I take out most of the topics that are still to be seen, the collection will be smaller, way smaller than that. That's why now we see that, hey, perhaps he's not using SuperMemo with incremental reading, or at least let's say the Wozniakian flow, that how is meant to be used, or what SuperMemo expects the user to use the software. That's one hint. So first, it's relatively small in the number of total elements. Then we have memorized. So out of those 265, about half of them are first items. The element type, it's item. And second, the state is memorized, which this makes sense. We could then say that, hey, perhaps the other stuff will be folders. Most of the stuff, folders and items. Therefore, something that has been processed. So more or less facts that have been committed to the long-term memory already. Nice. Then we have memorized topics. And wait a second. Memorized topics, you don't memorize topics, right? Of course. This is the SuperMemo jargon that is taking place on the learning process. They are scheduled. It's not pending or dismissed. I know, I can already do the spoiler, that he has no pending elements. So it's either memorized or dismissed. That's why even if he didn't share the latest stats, he cropped the picture, I can still deduce it. With the exception of the A factor. Why we can deduce it? Because there are three states. One is 0. Since I know the memorized, then it's a binary relationship. I have the total, so I only need to subtract. Easy peasy. Then going back here, is, hey, that's abnormally low. Those are all of the topics that you started. You haven't finished, meaning you haven't applied done. Means you have imported them, you create an extract, and a split, whatever, in any moment in the past. 1761 is very small. Very small. There's no ratio. Here I put a ratio of items per topic, but there's no ratio that is meaningful. Because let's say that they have always, which we'll see later, in previous years, he more or less have the same number, the same volume. Then whatever volume there is, even if it's quote-unquote normal volume, if you always have this volume, as your collection gets older, the ratio will increase, because I will pile up more items, even though I have about 2,000 topics at one time. It's just that I'm less incremental. I do fewer stuff in parallel. So this is what it's describing. For now, I have the suspicion. If I would have no more information, for now, I would say this guy is not very incremental. Only has a few stuff, a few sources and in parallel, and when he finishes this, then he imports more stuff, something like this. It's abnormally low, regardless of the collection. So if this was a user of 6 months, I'll tell the same. This guy is not very incremental. Nice. Next, memorized per day. This in SuperMemo means memorized items. It's about 18. Slightly something, about 0.1 shy of 18. Meaning that for 20 years, on average, he has been introducing about 18 flashcards every single day. And in this case, it's very easy mathematically, because what is arithmetic is also the truth. It won't be my case, and someone else's case, most likely. Because, perhaps from the days of those 20 years, I didn't use it for 5% of the days, right? So that if in a session, let's say I do 20, even though the average of every single session is 20 from the days I use it, that doesn't mean in natural time it will be 20. In his case, and from now on, I'm not going to mention this once again, we will take it simple because we're saying the same thing. Because he literally used SuperMemo every single day and finished the standing queue for items every single day. No exception in 20 years. That's why it's like a slave. Then, this is quite a lot if you take into account that he didn't stop. So, because the more I keep introducing, the more I will have in the outstanding queue. And I always finish the outstanding queue. So about 18 with always finishing the outstanding queue is quite a lot. It's a very high volume. And it's for 20 years. Usually what will happen that eventually you don't plateau, but you do fewer items, especially if you don't do language. Because you already covered a lot of domains. Because keep in mind, that's mathematics. So in 1,000 days, that is about 18,000 flashcards. That's why, in his case, he has multiple languages. So then it's easier to accumulate this number. But even if it's with language, this consistency is worth mentioning. Then, memory performance. Retention. The retention rate is crazy high. And if you're familiar enough, there's like a typo. One sec. Most users. Yeah, that makes more sense. Okay. Most users aim at the default. So I don't touch anything. I will aim by default at 95%. And even if I don't even understand that, you will aim at this. And if you're not there, it's because it's too soon. And with time, you will get that. Then, if you use SuperMemo for that many years and with no interruption, that's the best for fine-tuning the algorithm. It has data for every single day. And it matches the date. When it becomes outstanding, it's done, the repetition when it's outstanding. There's no over time, delays, anything. For the algorithm, that's very clean data. Therefore, whatever he decides to go for, it will be pretty good, accurate to go that number. And now, spoiler alert, you may know that you don't choose the retention rate. You choose the forgetting index. 95%, it's 10% forgetting index. It's not 100% minus forgetting index, by the way. You can only choose, in case you don't know, if you go to settings, you can only go from 20%, the maximum, to 3%. Then, if you do the math, this retention rate is impossible. In the sense that you have to always overperform the algorithm, because the algorithm at maximum can optimize to 3%. Then this will be easier to understand if we follow the measured forgetting index, which is the measured, by the way. It's 2.06. This is impossible. I can only set, even if that's the case, that in my collection I put desired forgetting index of 3%, which will do a lot of repetitions as a consequence. It's even lower than that. Means that he has a superhuman memory, an outlier of humans, or he's doing something else, which is this case. We will see. And if you have seen the previous videos, you already know. So just this is a big confirmation. This is mathematically impossible, meaning that the algorithm cannot optimize for the real performance. Therefore, there is a constant overriding of scheduling, especially at the beginning. It's cherry-picked, basically. And this has been always, constantly, and now it's in a trap that has to be constant forever. The R metric, this doesn't tells us much, because in the stats window, it's just for this year. So the year that was precisely 20 years milestone. It's not an average of that many years. At least what I could speculate, that hey, the R metric is very low, meaning the algorithms are very similar. So even if you used SuperMemo 18 or 15 or 16 different algorithms, the next interval will be very similar. That is exactly not something good, because you will want an R metric that is positive, because it's when SM18 is using, is calculating a longer interval. This happens for low priority items that you neglected for a while, you still memorized, you still recall, way beyond the retrievability or the stability. But that's not a scenario he leaves, because LittleFishChan's always do the repetition on the date that is scheduled. If he didn't decide the starting interval himself, overriding the default one, the next intervals will be dead on when they become outstanding. Therefore, where you see the difference in the algorithms is when you delay further. You're late. But he's never late. Therefore, he doesn't benefit of the difference of the algorithm at all. Therefore, it's look at this. It's positive, very marginal, and keep in mind that he already advanced this. He does about 400 repetitions. So even if it's one single day, it's quite meaningful, because there are a few hundred repetitions still. Nice. What about lapses? It's about 0.4, very close to 0.4. What does that mean? Well, the conclusion is that he follows the 30 rules of formulation very well, because it's rather low for being 2 decades. Basically, for every single item, he will lapse it for 0.4 times. Or he will need 2.5 items to lapse once. But we're not doing repetitions. We're saying items. So the items, whatever that many repetitions he did for those items, he will need 2.5 to lapse once. That's very low, because his retention rate is very high. Also, this you have to interpret this with items, the items number. So it's not the same having a retention rate of 10,000 items in the scope of 20 years than 100,000, tenfold. Okay, next, workload and efficient. Then here I did some math already, because how SuperMemo sometimes tells you that is, yeah, okay, you have spent 168 days. Yeah, 4,041 hours. In the last, then I remember personally that when I was analyzing the other analytics that we'll see later from 16 years, he more or less had the same hours I logged in Anki. Now this is beyond what he did. And I'm pretty sure that if I merge Anki and SuperMemo, I'm still below that. Because now I don't spend as much time doing flashcards. Then, here, that means about 20 or 30 minutes per day of item repetitions, recall time, and we'll see later in more precise the math. I have done the math when we compare. So no worries about that now. Then the speed. I have a video on this metric in case it doesn't make sense of items per year per minute. If you will have to spend 1 minute per day in a year, how many items you will do? So more or less it's like a metric of a speed, and as a milestone we could interpret this as a ceiling. So even if you had enough material to go through, if you had more items to go to rep, you'll be capped eventually by the speed. Meaning that it's not that you have to add more time, because you cannot anymore, you're maxed out. Therefore, if you want to increase the vanity metric, you will have to go quicker. Because the time you invest is the same. It does make sense. So basically, is measure how many items they're brought into long-term memory per minute per work per year. Daily work means per day. But again, the last reminder, he has used SuperMemo a single day. Therefore, we can neglect that, yeah, every single day that he uses SuperMemo, it's every single day of the calendar. We can take that out of the equation, and it's every minute per day per year. Nice. What about the average time per repetition? Now it's 3.4. That's extremely fast. Could be that it's very atomic, yes, but even if it's atomic, sometimes it requires longer. You need to read the text, connect the concepts, recall, and show the answer. If it's language, it's easier. I had this on record in the milestones, the reaction of my milestones in more detail, that when I did the English items, my non-language, or everything mixed together, the average was significantly higher and lower. Then this explains first, it's lower because I already know some information that he doesn't interleave at all. Meaning, he does a burst of 100 reps. Meaning that when you push for the next repetition, you know already you're going to get another item. So it's like a recall session. That's different if you are macro interleaving or micro interleaving. That, hey, perhaps now it's an item, now a topic, now another item, two topics that consecutive, stuff like this. And regardless of that, so just with this, helps you to go faster at side effect that you are neglecting you're sacrificing the interleaving. But even with this, it's an infused mnemonics that he uses is in the short term. It's very, very fast. This also allows higher volume. We'll see later, in the previous years, from 16 to 40 to 16 to 20, if he is going faster or quicker. And you will be surprised. Next, intervals. That is the average interval of the collection, meaning he has 1,000, let me see how many there were. 1,020 something thousand, let me see. I know, 1,030,000 memorized items. So the average interval of all of those is 2 years and 8 months. Considering that he has 20 years worth of history and of items, that is extremely low. Extraordinarily low. Extremely, extremely, extremely low. Extremely low. There's a video that I'm still editing at the time of the recording that are my milestone of 8 months and 1 year. And when I hit 1 year milestone in SuperMemo, my average was higher than a year. So it was higher than the milestone already, right? And even that today, if I check my collection, I am beyond that already in just 5 years. Even though I, as many users, I'm skewing the average by the short term. So I'm not making it larger, I'm making it shorter because I have a lot of items that I'm neglecting because I don't do all of the outstanding queue, unlike LittleFishChan's, meaning I have done one repetition and it's waiting for me, meaning, hey, the average repetition per items and all of this, it's lower than reality. It's because, hey, the interval is just 1 month in the database, but it is the next interval, it's, let's say, 5 months, but they haven't locked that repetition just yet. So it's still clocking just 1 month. So the average interval, albeit significantly higher than him, it is still skewed. So if now I only do subsets and I finish off my outstanding for items, I will still have a higher average interval. But he's not in his case because he finishes everything every single day. That is extraordinarily low. If you will have asked this, hey, there's a tutoring session with someone, and I see, he doesn't tell me anything, let's say. I go blind. When he shares the screen, I see 2 years, 8 months, and okay, I can kind of guess the age. Oh, you have been using SuperMemo off and on, so I will add more time. But not in my life, I will guess 20 years. Especially if the first thing that the person tells me is, hey, I have used SuperMemo every single day. First. And not that I use it, it's that I finish the outstanding for items, the outstanding queue for items every single day. I will, at the very least, expect 12 years, 8 months. That won't be surprising. It will be kind of low, but perhaps you did more material recently, in the region 4 years, so this has decreased the average interval. But 2 years and 8 months, that is ridiculous. Then for topics, that depends on what you do. He has very few topics, not even 2,000. So depends a lot on the sample. Since it's very tiny, across 20 years, depends a lot on what he's doing, specifically. Because what he's doing is not genuine incremental reading. Therefore, could be very, very many ways to skew this. At least we can say that, hey, he doesn't do perhaps extra dummies, in the sense that, hey, I do a dummy extract, then I do, let's say I do AI, right? So instead of XML and all of this, no, like I do, let me paste this in a topic, then I will make a selection of the question and answer, I will extract this, right away I will go visit the topic, and I will do the close deletion and apply done. Could be the case, or just the opposite, because this just tells me the ones that are memorized. So it could be the case that one are extremely short-lived, so they are never on the stats, because you create and apply done in the same day, even if it's just a few minutes, but it's the same day, never hits the stats. Or you have like placeholders that this could take years and years because you do a lot of repetitions. There's nothing I can say here. Okay. Next. Oh yeah, sorry, the current status. It's just this. It's outstanding. Again, this is not relevant because this just tells me of that precise day. At least there's something we can see here. We always mention that key finishes the outstanding queue for items. At least we know it's not the case for topics. He has 218 and he has 1500 topics. So hey, at least I can see there's like 6 or an 8 fraction of the memorized topics are outstanding. But yeah, I don't have metrics or enough knowledge that if he's using auto-postpone for that or not or whatever. I don't know. At least he's A. He doesn't finish the topics, even if he has a small fraction. And he's using, with this count, I already know he's using the what? The final drill. He has the final drill, but he doesn't use it. I don't know. Because if he uses it, those repetitions are not locked. So it won't modifies the stat at all. It's just wasting his time doing unnecessary repetitions. At least we know that he's using the final drill, and in that particular day has put 0, 1, 2, which are failure, are lapsed, or 3, only 13 times. We'll know that by average, he does about 400 repetitions. Meaning, if I'm correct, from those 400, only 13 were 3 or worse. Which that doesn't add up, because if he puts 4 or 5, most of the time, how come he has an extremely low average interval of just 2 years? That doesn't add up. Mathematically, it's impossible. But not that because it's 30% more, 30% less. No. It is fold times, 3 times, 4-fold. Not 40%. It's like a huge deal of difference. Next chapter is the priority protection. Again, this only tells me the precise day, but it's enough that we can extract something. First, he has 200 and something topics, 218 topics, and this, the position number 4, tells me something already. In this milestone, he's using SuperMemo 19 because it's using the number. It's not using the percentile like every other previous SuperMemo. That tells me that could be the first one, because if the 3 positions in the priority queue are items, in in the worst case scenario, this is the first topic in the 11 queue, in the priority queue, that is outstanding as well. Or, it's at best case scenario, is the 4th. Even though if it's the 4th, that's garbage, meaning that he has done all of the priority queue, all of the outstanding queue for items, but for topics, could be the case that he's neglecting everything, or he only does it a few days. Doesn't do it every single day, unlike the item repetitions. And how I know he does everything? If it was SuperMemo 18 or older, it will tell me that this is 100. Now it's giving me the position, but happens to be, if you remember this number, it's in my knowledge tree, is the total elements. So actually, it's something I discovered, something I realized off screen I still have margin of learning, imagine, because since I never in my life, in SuperMemo 19, finished the standing queue for items, not even using auto postpone, I didn't realize that when you finish, you have the equivalent of the oldest. You have the equivalent of the total number, meaning, hey, your priority queue is 264,385, is that your very last element in the priority queue is already covered. Good to know. So we know that he's focusing on active recall, and everything that he's reading is like a second step, and it's not a big deal, and that's why he doesn't show off in this metric, only the items, because he doesn't finish a standing. And we have seen that he has 218. He doesn't show off this because he doesn't brag this, because there's nothing to brag about this. If you consider that a streak is something to brag about. Nice. What about the burden? This is meaningful because it's, hey, this is already collection-wise. So for what you do, you have a burden of 330 repetitions, items, and 88 topics. This in parentheses is the what is today or the change of against yesterday, which doesn't tell me much when they do the other for business relevant. When I want to see a milestone, right? At least we can say that, hey, the topic repetitions is, or the burden is higher than expected. But again, what is the burden doesn't correspond of the workload necessarily. So the question that I ponder now, is he actually neglecting quite a big deal the topics? You have more information here if you want to pause, but this is what I said. Then let's go to the actual workload. So whatever is scheduled against what he does. And if you remember, if you use SuperMemo a single day, they should match. Well, they should match as long as you keep the same average time for item repetitions. Then the average is slightly more than half an hour. The expected is 19. So he's taking longer than expected. Then here I have some hypotheses. Hey, perhaps now he's taking longer time by average, so the repetition is no longer 3.5 seconds, it's let's say 5 seconds. So it's taking longer because SuperMemo is using the overall history average of the collection, because it doesn't store the time for each repetition. So SuperMemo doesn't know in the last years if you're slowing down or you go faster. And this, if you have 20 years, you're not affecting much the overall metric. So let's say that you are now, for whatever reason, you spend twice as much in the repetitions. To reflect this meaningfully in the stats for 20 years, I will need 20 more years just to even this out, to put it on the middle ground. Then, what we can see, he spent 33 minutes, which is discipline, but it's sustainable. So more or less, I could say that it will be harder not to do it, but to have enough material. So what will happen here is that, hey, it's not that I'm bored or I'm unwilling to do this time, half an hour a day of recall time. I have done this full times, and many crammers with Anki, with in the medical school, because their average time per repetition is higher. They will spend a lot more time. So that's half an hour. It's like a gift. It's like a rest day, an active rest day, because the load is crazy low. So that's affordable. It's sustainable. The fact that if you use SuperMemo and you clock repetitions of 3.5 seconds, you will run out of time. Sorry, you'll run out of material. And that's something that happened when I did some experiments with SuperMemo. I want to more or less reflect the workload of Anki. So not letting incremental reading, just doing flashcards, it was impossible. I need more material. And I was spending more time, because usually you will spend more time reading, doing topics, than doing items. So for doing half an hour of recall time means you are not doing incremental reading. Or you do a subset of incremental reading. It's impossible. Or that you do artificially more repetitions than required. Which this could, I suspect this, because of the extremely low average interval of 2 years and 8 months. Then this is the expected. The expected is the algorithm thinks ideal, and basically it's higher than expected. So it's doing extra work. We don't have enough information. It just, okay, whatever you're doing, you're putting more time than you require. What are you doing? Next is the average cost. This is slightly different. This is now is per item. For the average item you have, you will need to spend about 2 minutes for life. So all of the life of the item, even if it's 1 year, 10 days, 10 years, or 20. Because in your collection, since you use it every single day, and you add about 18 items every single day, you will have items of different ages, right? Nice. The expected was actually lower. So again, he's taking more time than the expected. Again, and even, it's not like before, there are even more cases. Because it could be the case that, most of your items still had some repetitions left. Meaning, to simplify, SuperMemo says 3 decades. Which, I mean, the collection is 2 decades already. So what's called future, it's in the next 3 decades, how many repetitions you're going to do. Meaning that if there's ever another repetition, which could happen, it will be perhaps just a few years later, 32, that did the cat, so you'll do that repetition, or it will be, imagine you do that repetition, the next one will outlive you already. So meaning that at worst, you only do 1 repetition, you only live, not counting 1 future repetition. So what is, for the rest of my life, I will do an error of 1 at maximum. Unless I will lapse that, so I will need to start over, But in average, assuming no lapses, it will be that number, whatever that is, or 1 more. Then, this could be the case, one of the reasons, that since your average interval is extremely low, that means that you will have a lot of items that you're gonna still see later. So the future is still 6, 7, or whatever, despite their old age. Therefore, the expected is whatever, but now is higher because you still have more repetitions to do in the future. Meaning, to simplify, that you have done half of the repetitions on their lifetime because they are abnormally short, if this makes sense. Then, overall, if we take this not into account, 2 minutes is a quite efficient item. That means that if I have an item, I will spend less than 2 minutes in my lifespan. So, if what I memorize is something that will consume 5 minutes of my time to search and understand again, it will be worth. I will be saving 3 minutes. So it's still good. But in this context, let's see. We have seen the speed already. Sorry about this. Then the total count 2.8 millions. So it's closing to 2.9 millions. That doesn't tell me much. It's just an accumulation of. It's like how many times I have blinked during the recording of this video. Good to know I have done those many repetitions. Is that good? Well, depends. If we take an average by the 20 years span, he has done 394 reviews, item repetitions every single day by average. Okay. Is it good? Is this good? Is this bad? No, it's just descriptive. So, it's the volume he's getting. He's not a better learner. Is that, he does a lot of repetitions that are not required, for instance. Could be the case. So if we don't know the volume of his knowledge, this doesn't tell me anything. It's like if I tell you that a person weighs 100 kilos or 220 pounds. Oh man, he's so fat. Nope. You don't know the height. If it's very high, he's very tall, it's his normal weight, or even underweight, if it's a 7-footer. So just this, the weight, okay, but since I cannot have more information, I cannot tell if that's a good, it's high or low, it's just the data. Then, this is then the same, but for every element type. Remember that the topic, here you also have concepts that are memorized and tasks. So topics are non-items basically. Most of the time, and especially with milestones, we could simplify that it are just topics, because what you will do with the other ones, against your entire collection, it will be anecdotal. Then, it's quite symmetrical to my surprise. So 12 repetitions and a half, more or less, per items, and the same for topics. So for topics, that is, we could say high. The average age interval, was 5 years. Then, I don't know what he's doing. He modifies the a metric, a factor, and so on. Assuming no is the default, there's like a stepping stone in what happens with items, what happens with topics if you don't touch anything, and if you do the repetition when it's scheduled. Is that it's good 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, but eventually there's like some inflection point, tipping point, that then skills grows way too quick, right? So then it is half a year, 2 years, it's I'm not going to see it again unless I do a reset at some degree. That is what I could expect, because if I have no more further information, if the average is 5 years, yeah, more or less doing 12 repetitions, you could send that to 5 years, so something genuine. Or you do something else that happens that the math more or less equals the same thing, but since I know he's not using SuperMemo how it's meant to be used for incremental reading, yeah, could be anything else. Anything else. At least is that he does a lot of repetitions for every single topic. But those repetitions perhaps doesn't mean that each repetition he takes an action and does a close deletion or an extract. An extract is unlikely. Seeing the volume, the extremely low volume, it's very unlikely he does extracts. Or does the extract one rep away, so it becomes a folder already. And this could be how many folders does he have in his collection, then it will add up. So, doesn't tell me much. And then items, this is too high. Are you telling me, by average, you have done 12 repetitions in your items, and still the average interval is 2 years and 8 months? That is a performance even lower than SuperMemo 2 algorithm, in the sense of the amount of repetitions. of course your retention rate will be so crazy high. You're doing a lot of unnecessary repetitions. This is crazy high. In my collection, I barely don't have items for that. I'll always link it's the same video, the milestone of 1 year collection, because I realized it was not possible. Because even if I hadn't had enough time to reach this, let's say it's been 5 years or 1 year, but then I see the future, so then how it will grow, the repetitions, then it will be, let's say it's 2 years, right? Then it will be 5, 12, 29, so enough to be on the calculation of 3 decades, so 29 years, and the next one is already outliving me, like in 50 years or 60 years, right? So even if it's forecasted, I haven't done the repetition, I know that if I'm successful, I will have the average item outliving me more than 3 decades with 11 repetitions. So he has already more than I need for incremental reading, and still he is only averaging 2 years and 8 months. Then this explains the very high number of repetitions, 2.9 millions, but this is extraordinarily bad. But cultural note is that A, this collection is 20 years old. He has used different algorithms, SM18, 16, 15, and whatever there was before, that I'm not that familiar with. So the calculations, perhaps they were more repetition, we're doing more repetitions, but not at the degree of SM2. So this is very, very similar to my Anki stats, because I use Anki with SM2, because FSRS, it's just been a few years that it has been available, and it's been 16 years. So I have done more than one repetition, 1,000. I did more than 1 million or a few million repetitions with SM2, Anki flavor. But then it was me that, no, let me put the ease factor, the E factor, lower, so it grows even slower, the topics. It looks like this. So again, my suspicion is that even if it's what he did is very good, he has wasted a lot of time. Crazy. Then the lapses that we have seen before, the same as before. It's about 0.4, so he needs 12.5 repetitions more or less overall. Then visualizing the effort. We could say that 2.88 million reps took an average of 3.46 seconds. Therefore, he spent 2,765 hours doing the math. But, if we see what he clocked overall, because you see this metric in SuperMemo, it's cumulative. It's not doing math. That's why the stats window, it's so arbitrary that you really have to memorize or to remember which stats, even if it's a ratio, is doing the actual math of the ratio, or it's history-wise, like the average time. The average time is a ratio, but it's not counting what's in your collection at all. It doesn't update like this. That's why we have an extraordinary mismatch. 2,765 hours, that doesn't add up at all. It's 4,045 hours. There's about 1,300 hours missing here. It's a very big deal. It's a very high difference. Then my only conclusion is that he has either reset some stat, which you could do, like the average time, you can reset it, which defaults to 5. But as you do few repetitions, you already modify that. Or that he has done some splitting and merging, and what happens that you lose this synchronization, because when you merge or transfer a branch, some stats update and some stats don't. Because you have to do it on the collection organically. It is not a start, or it doesn't carry over on the on when you import, or both at the same time. At least I know that the discrepancy is really high. Yeah. And then, just to finalize, total topics 129,185. Out of those, only 1,761, or 1.3%, are memorized. Since he doesn't have pending, we already know that what? That the rest, if you do the math, are folders. Could be the case, are likely folders. Why cannot necessarily? Because you can dismiss it without applying done, meaning there's some content. Could be the case. So at least, if you see, we know he has 130,000, it's there. 130,000 items, out of which just 3,000 shy of folders. So it's very close to have one item per folder. So, therefore, he doesn't have folders. That one folder contains several items. He can do it up to 3,000 times, more or less. Therefore, it will be the difference explained here. And the rest are just one by one. Then from one topic, there's only one card, one item. Nothing else. And this explains that his collection, to come full circle, is this size, because half of that, almost half of that, are memorized items. There are no pending items. We didn't know if at some degree they were. It's just in the milestone it will always 0. But because of that, about half of that are items and half of that are folders. So most of this is processed. Only 1,300 are not. Nice. So far this is my explanation based on what I know, so the stats that everyone can see, and what he has shared in the Reddit, and my expertise until here. Then, what is important now, the next chapter, is the comparison with the latest other known, that it was not the 16 milestone, by the way. It was slightly later than that, because this was not shared as a milestone. Even he has shared a milestone as well. He was shared in a Discord. So it was any random, it was at that day. So whatever that day was, he did a screenshot. So you see both as text, so it's easy to read, it's not pixelated. Now we can see the dismissed previously, not in this milestone. And it's 127,000. He has more or less the same dismissed today, meaning that that doesn't add up. You have this. Let's see it already. So you have 20,000 more items, but you only have 23 topics more. It's anecdotal. So you added less than one topic per month. Keep in mind that the difference is about 4 years, 3 years, 9 months, and 5 days. That's why, we don't have the count of dismissed into 20 years, but regardless of what it is, it doesn't add up, because doing the math, it was more or less 127,000. So, what happened here? You haven't added topics at all? We will need to see the other metrics to verify some explanations for this. Okay. So let's see it. Let me do it slightly bigger for your convenience. Here it's just the what's useful is this, the last column, and I didn't do extracts because extracts with tables was a nightmare. But since we're already familiar with everything, do you see memorized? 111,132. Nice. 20,100 more. Okay. Out of them, most of them, but 23 were items. Then the memorized per day, the speed has decreased. It was 18.5. So it has decreased 0.6 per day. So he's getting slower in the sense of introducing new items, which makes sense. That is what I would expect. The older your collection, the fewer items you will add, especially in the case that you keep doing all of the outstanding. You could keep the same speed or even increase it at the expense of neglecting a higher range of your priority protection, which it's not good. That doesn't mean it's bad, by the way. It's a different use case of using SuperMemo. Then total elements has increased 25,000. Hey, but we have said it was 21,000. No, they were the memorized, meaning he has done, it's about 21, so 4,800, that will be, my guess, folders so far. Okay. Then we have here topics has increased 4,500, which is more or less what I guessed already, right? It makes sense. But the memorized topics has been increased by 23 only, meaning that all of these, oh man, it's 4,500 round. So 23 are memorized, and the other ones, 4,500, are actually dismissed already. So folders. Then anecdotically, we have the outstanding queue of that day and the prior day. So again, we see that he was already using the final drill, and that is very low. So by average, he has about 400 repetitions. So even if it's in the lower range that day, particular day, 20 and 13 is very low, considering it's 3, the passing grade. So he's always, most of the time, like 90% of the time or more, grading 4 or 5. When he grades, by the way, or he grades but still reschedules, overrides the algorithm, which he does systematically, by the way, at the beginning. The variability protection tells us the same. It just now, because that was SuperMemo 18 or 17, no, I think it will be 17, I think. 100% means covered, the same as the number of elements for items, and topics is very high. So it's like 4, we could do the math, 0.03 out of 100 to 100, what this equals to. But yeah, it's something that is very high. So we could say that he has done almost no repetition that day that were from topics. Or at least at the time of the screenshot, because this is just that day. The retention. So surprisingly, the retention rate has increased. So see, almost in 16 years, the milestone was already unachievable mathematically. Meaning that if you follow the algorithm, it's impossible to have this retention. Well, it's possible, but on the short term, because then SuperMemo will be more laxed with the intervals. They will put higher intervals to lower your performance to match your desired forget index, which is 3%. He is still above that. It was 2.5. And the maximum, well, the minimum, the most strict one, is 3%. So not only he didn't, in 4 years, went closer to the 3%, assuming it was the desired one, best case scenario, no, he has decreased it significantly. About half point, which is better, recall. That means that it's been systematically overruling this for I don't know which period of time, but at very least 4 years. If in 4 years of using SuperMemo every single day you don't succeed, it's because whatever you keep doing or adding, so the new elements that are introduced, they keep messing the algorithm. because he keeps resetting manually the interval. The R metric, same as before, only depends on that particular day, in the low range, not as same as before. Same conclusion. The burden was higher. Here it's 14 the total. If you do the math, it's just about 14 less, but that's not meaningful because of the distribution. The topic was just 16, and now it's 88. So 40 years later, at least I can know he has been adding more items, even though the quantity of items memorized is the same. How they become outstanding, assuming it's organic, how they become outstanding, it's higher than before. But the burden of items is significantly smaller. 460 to 330, it's 86 items less. It's quite significant. And perhaps that doesn't add up because this will require to have the same metrics but faster. So I don't do more, I do the same but quicker. It will be virtually the only possible way to explain that if it's organic. Burden, that doesn't tell me much. It depends on the precise day. So then workload. Hey, it has decreased 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Which is not a big deal. It's just that he spends less time than before. Less time doesn't mean less quantity of items. If he does more repetitions, but he does it quicker, and even quicker that he spends less time, is still feasible to explain that mathematically. Then the expected one is significantly higher. 31, and it's just 18, 19, 12 minutes different. This is like what, 30%? This is super meaningful. Why the expected workload now in 20 years it's so low? Low, relatively speaking. Let's see. The time. This is irrelevant. It's the time of that precise day. We already know that he spends about 90 minutes. Sorry. He spends I don't know how many minutes. We did this by the average of the collection. It was about half an hour, I think. So it's beyond that. But look at the drastic change. The average time for 4.5 seconds to 3.5. It's 1 second faster by average. This has two interpretations. One, at some point during 2022 and 26, he has reset that. So all of the history of years is not taken into account. If this is not the case, and it's organic, this is a massive deal. Because the calculations we did were as 3.4 seconds the entire collection. But to move this from 1 second, and the number of repetitions, if we now go the repetition, he has added 500,000 repetitions. He has done more than 2.3 repetitions. So it was 50-50. It just, you'll need to do 2 seconds faster, so the average is 1 second lower. It's in the middle ground. But no, it's not even a fifth. It's within a quarter or a fifth, right? Yeah, 2 million, yeah. See, I didn't calculate that. Let's say 4.2, 4.3 times more of what it is than what you're adding. So to decrease this by a second, these repetitions, these 500,000 repetitions, should be several seconds faster to lower by just 1 second. So if this is organic, means that now he's flying over the repetitions. This is, again, like the experiment I did with the advanced English collection, that I did a subset of the pronunciation. So I already knew that the next repetition will be an English word, and what I evaluate is its pronunciation, and it's just one word, like workload, time, speed, cost, interval, repetition. So I can go extremely fast how I recall that. And remember, it's just the recall time. So the time that I consider what I have thought or pronounced and what I hear, I make the comparison. Okay, that's what I thought. How well I do, or if it's just the spacebar, and one as a failure, so it's binary, it's quicker. That is not taken into account. It's only the recall until I show the answer. And I did 1.9, and that was the way that it could be quicker. It's the easiest item to do. It's the quickest to respond because there's only one word that I have to read, and it's always reusing the same context. I'm not interleaving. I am only changing the word I need to recall its pronunciation in the same language. And even with this, that is the quickest I can do, it was about 2 seconds. 1.9 by average. So this is absurd. So I would like to think that he has reset that. Or it will be very low quality repetitions. But it will make sense again, because he's doing a lot of repetitions that are not required. 12 repetitions to get an interval of 2 years and 8 months by average is ridiculously low. Absolutely low. Then the time. He has added 22 days and 8 months. 22 days and 8 hours. If you multiply this, you need to multiply this by days to put in the hours, and then divide by the time difference. Theoretically, we will have what? I will leave this for later. I then calculate this, by the way, because I didn't want to spoil myself. Then let's go. Oh, it was just a zoom. Okay, let's leave this for later. Then lapses. He has improved the lapses. Turns out that day, in particular, both time it was 9. Anecdotal. But even if it's very marginal, he has decreased this. Which makes sense, because he has increased the average retention rate. So, makes sense. The speed. Actually, this is surprising, he's getting faster. 100, and at this level, so usually when you have spent 16 years in a collection, every time you're going slower and slower, the average will be becoming slower. By no means you can change that. So after that degree of maturity, then after 16 years, in just 4 years, you increase it to 194, so 6.6 more. The fact that it's not lowering, but increasing, is because you have changed something dramatically. One could be the time you spend, which is not his case. The average tells me it's very similar. It's even 1 minute less, 52 seconds less, 54 seconds less. So you spend even, anecdotally, it's not even a minute, but less time, and you go quicker. That means you have to do more repetitions than usual, even with 1 minute less time. Meaning the average repetition time has to be significantly lower, which is the case. Despite that, the average cost only decreased 4 seconds. It was 156, about 2 minutes. And what we have seen before, in the first section of the video, it was 52. So you only improve 4 seconds, the average cost. Yeah, it's because it's diluted with many items. You have included 20 something thousand. So what do you do? Yeah, it's diluted with thousands, so it is a matter of seconds. And this will be changed when you do more or less 50-50. If you have 16 years, the milestone of 32, I expect this to be double or half. Or 50% more, 50% less. It just didn't catch up. The expected cost, it's going much faster. It's going this direction, 38 seconds. That's why I think to believe that's the case. So now what SuperMemo expects is a lot shorter cost of 1 minute and 3 seconds. That means that he is still carrying over a lot of old data. Since it's an average, yeah, you already had 2.2 million data points. So you only decrease 4 seconds. But in reality, more recent stuff is much quicker. And I will say too quick, because keep in mind, this means 12 repetitions, not for life, only to 2.6, on 2 years and 8 months. Then, in those 4 years, the next one actually, it was 2 years, 6 months and 14 days, has only increased 2 months and 9 days in 4 years. So in 4 years, you had a lot of opportunities to see, to have items becoming outstanding from the past, from 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. But if you have such collection, you should have more items that are from 5 years ago or older than 5 years ago to today. It doesn't add up. Basically, you only have 20,000 items, 21,000 items, that the creation was from today or 4 years ago. And you have 130,000. So you have 110,000 that you did the last repetition 4 years ago or later. So how come more than 100,000 items are older than 4 years, and the average interval is just 2 years and 8 months? Meaning, with this just heuristic, I already know that most of your items, the interval, it's shorter than the natural time that happened. It should be the other way around. That the age, so the average age of the creation is 2 years, 8 months, but the average interval is already 5 years. It's not that this is not disproportional. It's that it is proportional in the opposite dimension. Beyond me. This explains one of the lessons I learned, and again, what I mentioned in the 1 year milestone reaction, that I thought the more repetitions the better, then the more repetitions the more I learn. No, actually the more repetitions the least efficient you are. Again, we need to know something that we cannot have, that if we could evaluate the knowledge volume you have, that's your network, your synapses in your brain, So we could put some value, some number in the knowledge you have. And then based, you have done that many repetitions to have these flashcards in your long-term memory, and these flashcards are encoding this degree of knowledge. Let's say 100. Nice. Then another person could have the same, but instead of that many repetitions, you did fewer, and you had fewer flashcards, but that maps to the same knowledge. Therefore, you encoded more information per flashcard, and you required fewer repetitions per flashcard because you have been more incremental, you had done more forgetting in the meantime, so you crystallize the knowledge, and all of this. We don't have that, so we don't know, but I'm very, very prone to think that it's like my case with Anki. That the volume is very high, but not because there's a lot of knowledge. Meaning, he could have achieved the same knowledge of he has with the 130,000 items with 96% retention rate, which half of the repetitions. Or even fewer than half the repetitions. Then, let's continue. The topics has increased about a year. Again, doesn't tell me much. Since it's only 1,000 something topics, I don't know what he's doing. It's not incremental reading. I know that he has a flow that he said that he reads in Kindle, not non-incrementally. He sends some extracts, we could say highlights. Then you copy this, I think, manually in SuperMemo, and then he processes that. But it's like he only does the very last step in SuperMemo. You don't have the source, and you do all of the scheduling in SuperMemo. Just when you already had some value in a extract. So it's already one repetition away from globalization. Then repetitions. Actually, the topic repetitions has decreased 0.4. Again, I don't know what he's doing. And items has increased 0.4 almost, which is not much in 4 years, but it's because, again, this is 16 years of every day, and it's a cumulative metric. So to change this meaningfully, you have to do a dramatic change. So of course, he's putting more repetitions per items. This is what I would expect, because even if he's introducing new elements, he's getting elements from the past. And from 4 years ago, so the 110,000 that he has for 4 years or older than that, he will see that again. And since the average interval is so low, he will see it once again, because the times difference is 9 years, 9 months. So it could be that some elements that were scheduled already in a year interval, but 6 months before or whatever, could do 2 repetitions on that time frame. So that's totally feasible. Repetition count, we already got that. Then this means 500,000, more than 500,000 in not even 4 years. Let's put 60,000. That is 150,000 per year, more or less. Last rep, all of this, it's useless, because this is what he did. So the last element. So at least I can say anecdotically, last repetition that he did that day, so the last rep that was an item and topic, it was scheduled the same year, and here the same year, which makes sense. And the next repetition here of item was 2 years and something, more or less his average, and this is 3 years and something, slightly more than his average, but close to the average anyways. So at least I know that for topics he has longer intervals. That is 5 years, which is again his average interval. So at maximum with this, I could speculate that he has, with topics, he has a lot of homogeneous intervals. So whatever his flow with topics, could be the case that how the topic distribution is in his collection is very homogeneous. And he never had any pending. Then there are some stats. There are some that are in, how you call it, in bold, because you can do some math. For instance, if we know that it happened in between Milestone 1,376 days, if he had about 21,000 elements, that means it's the same as 15.22 new elements per day. This is more useful, because what they got is the average of 16 years and the average of 20 years. Then if a pattern, there's a different pattern, I don't know that, right? Because I have the collection wise. But since I have now the metrics of both milestones, I can do the math and then see the difference between those two milestones only, not from the reference of the first day of the collection. Then he's getting slower. The memorized per day, basically, it's 18.77 added per day, right? If you remember this. But the memorized elements has only increased by 15.22. That doesn't add up. And most of them are items. The topics are just anecdotal, 1 every 2 months. So why, if I do the math, it's 15, but he still has 18 added per day? Could be the case that he actually adds items that then he deletes. I mean, a proper SuperMemo user will do this at some degree, because I see that's a duplicate, or this is now redundant. And it's not a redundancy I want, because the redundancy I want is because it's using jargon. The other is like an analogy, is a desired redundancy. No, is that, I forgot I did this item and it's a duplicate now, right? Or, now that I know this, that is more generic, I need the crystallization. I can do the generalization of the knowledge. Now I don't need the specific cases because it's always for the same reason, right? So I can delete those when I spot them. This is a healthy user of SuperMemo. It's not that you have wasted your time. It's that you have seen growth in your knowledge. So you no longer need that. So therefore you just reformulate it if you need it for the, it's the same, but I wanted the jargon, right? The precise jargon. I want this redundancy or I will delete it. So at some degree, if we do the math with my collection as well, there will be some discrepancy because a percentage of my items will be deleted. But I don't suspect it's that high. That is like 3.5 per day. So like 1,000 a year elements you delete. I mean, could be with easy math now, but you will consistently delete 1,000 items. Is quite high, but yeah. Relatively speaking, he only has 100,000 in the collection. So are you deleting 1% of your collection every single day by average, accumulating per year? It seems excessive. Then, what I mentioned before, that he has done about 400 reps by average, spends just 23 minutes, which is, if you remember, we had 19. The expected was like 32, like half an hour. He is getting faster. And we can also see the repetition speed. He does 17 reps per minute. That will be like the Anki style to see it, or 3.44 seconds per repetition, which is much faster. So those are my conclusions overall of Little Fish. I hope that it has been helpful. And the idea is that, hey, it's like an exercise how with the metrics, the stats, you can deduce some of the usage, which is not something you want to do either. It's not a skill you want to develop unless you are a tutor. But at least it's, hey, we have some proof, mathematical proof, of something that is extraordinary. It's not that, I have used SuperMemo, but then this year I haven't used it as much because I have been very busy. Then I did language learning, then I did not. Then I merged. So a lot of more than 100 repetitions that I did are not locked in this collection, are lost because I did merge and so on. It's a complete mess, right? Here it's very meaningful because it's every single day. It's very consistent with the outstanding that whatever you did is the same as the natural day. So we can do arithmetics. We cannot do arithmetics with my collection. So it will be a huge limitation. And it's something, unless I want to convey, I will be waiting for his LittleFishChan's comments himself in this video eventually, as he did with previous videos, that, hey, this is something that it's good to know, to have, that, hey, I have done many million repetitions, and something that, hey, you actually, thanks to SuperMemo, you have memorized a lot of vocabulary, and you can speak different languages, Japanese, Spanish, Indian, so different families, Hindi, and different languages of, different families of languages, with some degree of proficiency, thanks to the vocabulary that sticks with SuperMemo. But I want to convey, that's why I'm repeating this so much, that this is an example that is not good. It's not good, not in what he achieved, because he did. It's in the cost of what he has achieved. The efficiency here is low. And I know that he does very good practices. The mnemonics are very good quality. He uses images, aspects. So a lot of what he does, you could say it's pro. He's not the average guy, like someone that was from Italy, I think, that he did, Milestone of Anki, how many millions he had, but his usage was crap. The 20 rules of formulation, nowhere to be found. So absolute low quality of flashcards, practice. So everything you don't have to do in special edition. That's not the case, because I know that he does things very well done, and some skills that he has developed in a high degree. But for whatever reason, because he has those, I don't know, concerns or whatever, that no, I have to do that standing queue every single day, At least I want to tell you with those numbers that doesn't go to your favor. Yeah, you will have this recall the resistance rate super high. To what? To no benefit. You will have achieved the same thing with a lot less effort. So, and the other stuff is already covered in the other videos that, yeah, you sacrifice interleaving, pleasurability at some degree, but okay, it's a trade-off because of performance. No, you are not getting performance, just the opposite. You are lowering the performance. Therefore, you spend less time enjoying what you do or spending time with friends or whatever that is, or with family, at the cost of something that you don't overperform. You are a victim, is what I meant. You are a slave, and this time is not getting back. This is what I have experienced on my own. That's why this case is very unusual in SuperMemo, extremely unusual, and to this degree makes it close to unique if there's someone else. That's why I spend so much time making this video with not just as, the vanity of the 2 million. No. Look inside and you will see that what you thought it was golden. Hey, I wish I was like this guy. Please don't. It's not worth it. I would say please follow me, in the sense that follow what I do. Without the specifics, what I do is follow plausibility. So, whatever that is, of course will be different from mine. That's why I don't follow what I do. Follow what I follow, is what I will say. You'll know that it is suboptimal. Yes, you will finish a standing queue every day, you will neglect this, you will neglect that, but in the long term, especially the very long term, it's the one that is sustainable. And the flow that is sustainable is the one you will end up doing. And it will be pleasurable. I don't do this because I need to, or because I have to, or because I want this metric to accumulate and then share it online, right? I do it because it's rewarding, not just the end goal, but the entire process has been rewarding. And happens to be that when you are in this meta that you did for pleasure, you will be always suboptimal. So you will, to simplify, you won't be, if it was a race, a rat race, you won't ever be first. Let's say you're fourth. You never hit the podium. You are there, never hitting the podium, but you're always there, suboptimal. And then it's, hey, I have been using SuperMemo for 20 years, suboptimally, for pleasure. That is well above 20 years, or whatever years you want, as a rat race. There's no comparison. There's no comparison. Remember that this, at the end of the day, is just a tool. And it becomes so stupid that I have that many repetitions, or that many items, like, hey, I have blinked 2,000 million times in this video, and you only blink 1 million. I'm better than you. Sounds stupid, right? It's the same thing. I hope I succeeded in communicating this, and it was at least entertaining to see the numbers of this collection. That's all for now. Let me know your opinion, and as always, if you need help, you can get tutoring, link in the description. See you incrementally.